Okay, good morning everyone. Sorry for my later post. So I just forgot to post our YouTube lecture link. So I thought that I did it. So I spent quite a long time. So just waiting for you. So why no students come to here? Yes. Yeah. So let me just check the attendance in the first page. 이재혁 씨, 고하늘 씨, 심준호 씨, 이승빈 씨, 이정태 씨. So if you are here, then please show your attendance. 네, 고하늘 씨 안녕하세요. 심준호 씨 안녕하세요. 이재혁 씨 안녕하세요. Okay, then let's go. 이정태 씨 안녕하세요. Then let's go to the next page. 이충아 씨, 정상아 씨, 그리고 홍주표 씨. 네, 이승빈 씨 안녕하세요. 네, 이충아 씨 안녕하세요. 정상아 씨 안녕하세요. 홍주표 씨 안녕하세요. Okay, up to the second page we have full attendance. So let's go to the third page. 김민선 씨, 김유신 씨, 배민열 씨, 배서령 씨, 서하연 씨. 네, 김민선 씨, 배민열 씨, 김유신 씨, okay, 서하연 씨, okay. Then let's go to the last page. 조대현 씨, 최승규 씨, 김성수 씨, 미스터 나단 마니큐에르. So if you are here, then please leave your message. 조대현 씨, 안녕하세요. 김성수 씨, 네, 안녕하세요. 최승규 씨, 안녕하세요. Okay. Good morning, 나단. Okay. Then I think that maybe I can call once again. 배서령 씨 계신가요? Okay. So if you are here, then please let me know. So then I will check your late attendance. Okay. So good morning again, and let's go to our already seventh lecture. Oh, time really flies. Okay. Okay. So, how was your homework number 6? So, before starting today's lecture, I wanted to say something. It means that although in our, how can I say, the live lecture, the, the live question from our students, there are not many questions from you. However, I wanted to tell you that in reality, we means that I and some of you make a really frequent email communication around the lecture contents and homework problem. For example, the solution of already passed homework problems, or some explanation or description about homework problem, posted homework problem. So I think that there are two groups in this classroom. So one is active, one is in one group, students are actively asking me questions, not only in this live lecture, but also in email communication. And there is another group. In that group, so no one asked me questions. So please, I'm here to help you to understand the lecture contents. So please use your how can I say, use your okay, so fully utilize your time to improve your understanding on the lecture content. Okay, so I really strongly wanted to ask you to ask once again question, raise questions, then it will be answered. So that will be much better than just to listen and understand. Okay. So in this sense, before starting today's lectures, I wanted to ask whether you have any question to me before starting today's lecture, lecture 7. So if you have any question, then please leave your question in the chatting message. Then I can answer before starting today's lecture. So I will wait for a few seconds. Then if you don't, then I will move to our main lecture contents. Okay, then let's start our lecture with a review of how can I say, the last part of L6. So what was the last part of L6? So after long discussion about the silicon crystal structures and concept of intrinsic carrier density, we now tested different ways to increase the number of conduction electrons in our silicon material. So I have proposed first two not so successful ways in our application. One was elevating temperature, so heat the silicon up, then of course, we will have more electrons. However, in that heated environment, we cannot live. So that is not very reasonable solution. And another one is just exert some photons on silicon surface, then of course we will have more electrons, so which can be used for our conduction purpose. However, how can you generate the light? And if we don't have light, we cannot use the electronics. That will not be a reasonable way. So as an alternative to that difficulties, I just introduced so introduction of impurity atoms into our silicon substrate. So simply speaking, so if this is silicon wafer and this is very thin, however, thin means that orders of several hundred micrometer. But in the semiconductor technology, so top few micrometer, we introduce certain impurity atoms. So impurity atoms, as I told you before in the previous lecture, lecture 6, when silicon is a host material, then every other element is working as an impurity. So we have more than 100 elements in the periodic table. However, in silicon, except for silicon, any atom in the periodic table basically impurities. However, in my opinion, there is only, in my experience, there is only 3 real impurity used in practice, like boron and phosphorus and arsenic. So there are only three species, and for boron and phosphorus and arsenic, their action or their effect are different. So when sorry about that. Sorry. When we introduce boron atoms in silicon layer or phosphorus atom or arsenic atom in silicon layer, then that will generate different effect. Okay, so I will explain it later. But before starting the discussion about difference between this so-called P-type impurity and here we have an N-type impurity. So I just wanted to say, what else? How about all other atoms? Other atoms are not used in practice. In reality, they must be avoided at best. So, for example, iron, if that is introduced in our, can say, silicon, that will make it very critical, or copper, that will make a very critical effect, so critical bad effect, so undesirable effect on our application. So, in the first part of our today's lecture, I wanted to discuss about why others are not used in our application. So that is the first thing. So are you guys all with me? So our main goal is to discuss about this kind of impurities. But before starting discussion about boron, phosphorus, arsenide, which are good impurity atoms in silicon, I wanted to think about bad ones which are not used in practice. So what is our purpose to introduce once again these impurity atoms? The reason why we intentionally introduce impurity atom into the silicon substrate is to increase the number of charged particle which can move the charge. So, for example, conduction electron. That can be a way to increase the number of charged particles which can move. So, so boron or phosphorus and arsenic can serve as a way to increase the number of charged particles in this case. However, for other other materials, they do not increase the number of conduction electrons or later explained the hole density. So it is because think about this one. Let me just come back to our silicon crystal structure once again. So let's say now we have a certain silicon atom, then it can have, yes, here we have 1, and here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 surrounding silicon atoms can found. So think about the situation where impurity atoms comes into the silicon material. Then what will happen? If there introduce on silicon non-silicon atom, then it will be placed somewhere here. Yes. So when it is taking this position, so position which is not the well-defined position for silicon atoms, silicon and silicon, we feel that these positions are the required position for silicon. So if our impurity is located here, then usually that does not act as an impurity. So, so then maybe your natural question is, then how can you introduce an impurity atom at precisely at this point instead of that point? Do we have such a means to place our atom precisely at that point? Unfortunately, we don't have such a technology. Then how can you do that? First, we just introduce atoms, impurity atoms into our silicon. So there is no guarantee that our impurity atom from the beginning take this position. This one is the desired situation. The impurity atom take the place of a silicon atom. Of course, if that happens, then what will happen to our previously occupying silicon? So that should be moved somewhere, which is not designed for our silicon atoms. So if we have such an atom, then we say that this is interstitial silicon atom. So usually in this case, it does not act as any play any role in the charge contribution. So let's come back. So that is the desired case. Silicon, non-silicon impurity takes the place of a silicon position of a silicon atom, then that will work or act as an impurity atom. However, in reality, usual case is yes, silicon here, and we have impurity here. Then how can we move it into that desired position? So magical way to move, there is nothing like that, but one thing is just to heat it. If we just add certain heat into our system, our vapor, so for example, just to place our silicon vapor into a furnace, then just to increase the temperature, then what will happen? Then by this action or help of elevated temperature, this one has additional energy. Also, every atom can have additional energy to move around. Then for certain atoms, so this instead of this configuration, but this configuration is more energetically prepared. So after heat our silicon vapor for a while, then when we just cool it down, then we find that although at the beginning the impurity atoms were in the interstitial position, so interstitial position means that the position which is not designed for our silicon lattice point, then now our impurity atom can take that lattice point. So now in this case, then what will happen? This guy, the impurity, just to act like, or it pretend be a silicon atom, although this is not a silicon atom. So for example, it can be boron or phosphorus or arsenic. So of course they are not silicon. However, they just take the position of silicon and say that, okay, I can provide, for example, one atom, just like a silicon. Then what will happen to our surrounding silicon? Oh, I had previously a good silicon neighbor, but now it's gone, and an alien comes to here. But anyhow, this new neighbor say that I can provide one electron. Good. Then, just like our previous case, each atom can provide electrons. So, just like this, silicon can contribute to one electron, and this one can contribute to one electron. So, from the viewpoint of our surrounding silicon atoms, although my neighbor is now changed, not silicon atom, it is no longer a silicon atom, but anyhow, effectively, it can provide me one single atom, so we can make a certain electron cloud. So effectively, there is no change for this connection, usually called as bonding, and there is no change, and no change. So, yes, usually in that case, there is no change from the viewpoint of bonding or connection of two atoms. However, in the case of arsenic or phosphorus, actually it has in its outermost shell not 4 electrons but 5 electrons. So for phosphorus and arsenic atoms, among 5 electrons, 5 outermost electrons, 4 of them can be consumed to make bondings with surrounding silicon, 4 silicons. However, there is still one remaining electron. Then this remaining electron takes the state which is exactly same with pure silicon. In the pure silicon, we have a very lucky electron which can be thermally excited and can contribute to the conduction. So you know that previously for pure silicon case, the ratio is around trillion. So ratio between entire outermost electrons and the lucky electron which can conduct the current is the ratio was just orders of a trillion. However, if we consider this is a thermal excitation. So if we just leave our pure silicon and consider only thermal energy at 300 Kelvin, then the probability for an electron to be excited to the conduction state, that is really small. That probability is really small, low probability. However, if we consider this impurity case, then every impurity anyhow have one single remaining electron, so it should take the state which can be accessed by our thermally excited electrons. So I think that some of you can feel a little difficulty to understand this relation, but please, I wanted to repeat once again. In the previous lecture, we have thought about a pure silicon material. In that case, we remember that the actual number of our electrons located in the outmost shell in silicon will be just orders of 10 to the, not 13, 10 to the 23rd. So we have a lot of electrons. However, only very small portion of it can be thermally excited. But when we consider the added impurity, then each impurity can provide certain, each impurity can provide one electron to our conduction state. So therefore I wanted to say efficiency to generate the conducting electron is much better for our method, new method, adding impurity atoms. If you introduce one impurity atom, probably you will have one conduction electron, and if you introduce two, maybe you will have two, and 100, and you will have 100. So that is quite an efficient way to increase the number of conduction electrons. So let me come back. So I want to say, if you introduce, for example, 10 to the 17 per cubic centimeter impurity density, for example phosphorus atom, then maybe we will have also 10 to the 17 per cubic centimeter of our conduction electron. So there will be almost 1-to-1 or similarity between the number of added impurity atoms and number of the conduction electrons. Okay, so that is the case for arsenic and phosphorus. So therefore they are regarded as good impurity which can be used in our application. But now think about other elements, so not like phosphorus, arsenic or boron. In that case, what will happen in this case? Yes, still, if you introduce a certain impurity, then it can try to make up bondings, and it can have also excessive electrons which exceed the number of 4 which is used to make a bonding between the impurity atom and surrounding silicon atoms. Then how about this one? For other atoms, not like phosphorus or arsenic, then of course it can contribute, for example, it can have additional excessive electrons, but yes, we have excessive electron, but that electron does not come to the conduction electron status. So there it means that this impurity atom generate a localized state which is tightly bind to our impurity, and it cannot move any further. So the difference between this phosphorus, arsenic or boron, like good impurity atoms and bad impurity atom, is that once you introduce impurity, anyhow you will have excessive electron, for example. Then for good impurity, then it contributes to the conduction electrons, and for bad impurity it does not contribute to conduction electron. It generates a new state, and this new state does not conduct at all, and it is just placed around the impurity atom. So you just implant your impurity atoms somewhere, and if you design or select good species, then you will find that okay, by increasing the number of impurities, I have the change of conductivity or resistivity. That is a good way. However, if your species is not suitable for this host material silicon, then although you just make a lot of impurity atoms inside your wafer, but that does not increase your conductivity. So it is in some sense useless, and not only useless, that makes harmful effect on the device purpose. However, I will not talk about it in this time, in this semester. But anyway, so let me just conclude my first part. So why we have to consider some good impurities like phosphorus, arsenic, or boron. It is only because only those atoms can really change the number of conduction electrons. So if we use different materials which is not good for our silicon material, host material, then it does not increase the number of conduction electrons. That is the point. Okay, so that was the first topic of our lecture today. And do you have any question about my explanation up to now? If you are with me, then I see that now you fully motivated that, okay, now we have to use, for example, boron, phosphorus, and arsenic. So only these species can introduce meaningful and useful modulation of conductivity. So are you all with me? And if you have any questions, then please let me know. Also, I see that this is a good chance to receive your question. So if you don't have any question, then please let me know. And if you have a question, leave your question in the chatting window, then I can answer your question. Okay, anytime, please interrupt me anytime. Then second topic is, now we understand, now only these makes meaningful change in our conductivity, or conductivity means that the conductivity is directly related to the number of charged particles in our host material. So as I told you before, this phosphorus and arsenic, they have 5 electrons and 5 electrons in its outermost shell. So 4 of them are used for just making a bonding with the surrounding electrons, and 1 remaining excessive electron is used to occupy a state for current conduction. That was the story. And okay, I will check your late attendance. Okay, and if you have any question, you means that our entire students. So if you have any question, please interrupt me anytime. Then let's continue our discussion. So now you understand, okay, phosphorus and arsenic, we have excessive electron. So that introduce certain excessive electron, and that is used for our current conduction purpose. However, think about this boron. Boron, unfortunately, it does not have number 5. Instead of that, it has a number 3. Then, well, think about this case once again. Now we have, yes, so instead of this silicon atom, now we have impurity. And right now we are considering the boron here, and each silicon atom say that, okay, I will provide 1 electron and you provide 1 electron. Let's make a bonding. So then let's say one electron and 1 electron. one electron, of course from this one, this one, this one, this one, and also one, so electron and electron. So for three of them, yes, they can make good bonding as before. However, in this case, in this remaining one silicon, so surrounding silicon provide one electron. However, oh, sorry about that. I have no additional, no remaining electrons. So here we don't have electron, so it cannot be treated as well-made bonding between impurity atom and silicon. Then what will happen to this case? Oh, so when you consider, for example, phosphorus and arsenic, then we have again remaining electron. Then that remaining electron can freely move inside the silicon crystal structure. So that is the movement of electron. So that can contribute this current conduction. However, now we have here one missing electron. So supposedly we need an electron at that position, but due to the lack of electron provided by this boron atom, so we don't have any atom. So then supposedly it should have two electrons. That is the normal case. However, in reality, in this case, we have only one electron. Oh, so if this is the reference, then how about this situation? If everybody has two electrons, and the case where we have just one electron can be regarded as lack of one electron. So are you with me? Although there really exists one electron, however, our reference value for our discussion is that it is guaranteed to have two electrons. That is a normal case, and that is not that special. However, if we have one missing electron in that position, oh, that is a special one. And although we have two electrons and one is missing, and lack of one electron can be treated as existence of one positive charge. Of course, I wanted to say that there is no positive charge at all. So where is the positive charge? In reality, you can find the positive charge only here. You can find, for example, 14 electron charge positively, two positive charges, and 14, 14, and 14. And also boron has a certain number, 5, and it has it's a positive charge. Once again, in this part, do you have really a positive charge? No, it is negatively charged in reality. However, since our expectation is just two negatively charged particles there, so just one negatively charged at that bonding can be, or that is So sorry about this disconnection. So can you hear me? So could you please let me know the connection is back? So for a while there was an interruption. So I'm afraid that for a while the live streaming was disconnected. So could you please leave your message? You are still here and you can listen me. You can hear me. So could you please? Any of you? Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So where are we now? Now, oh, thank you. Thank you, students. Now you understand. This is just a way of interpretation. There is no positive charge at all. However, by setting our reference value as -2, twice of our electron negative charge, so just one electron negative charge can be regarded as a positive charge. So you know, actually, maybe you know the name assigned for this thing. So the deficiency of electron in this bonding in semiconductor is called as what? Called as a hole. So yes, you can find a hole. So when you visualize it in this way, then you can certainly find that there is a hole of an electron. So missing part for missing position for an electron, and that is called a hole. So now you understand, if we introduce boron impurity, then instead of this phosphorus, or in contrast to our phosphorus or arsenic one, that the okay, the discussion was so simple. We have an excessive electron, then that excessive electron just to occupy the conduction state, so that is used as a conduction electron. However, in the case of boron atom, in this case actually our electron does not occupy the conduction state. There is no conduction electron. Instead of that, we can introduce a positive charge in our valence electron. Valence means that well anyway, let's avoid many technical words once again. So by adding this boron atom, then we can introduce a positive charge which is located here. Okay, so what's the meaning of negative charge in this sense? Once positive charge in this sense, although we call it as a positive charge, so but I think that should be interpreted as this way. So -1 is -2 plus 1. Since this is too obvious, or -2 is regarded as a certain granted number, that's the reason why we just focus on this number. So compared with other bonding states having just -2 charge, now it has just -1 charge, so we have additional positive 1 charge, and that is treated as a positive charge. So and it is the positive charge in this bonding is called as a hole. So let me summarize my second discussion. So second topic of today's lecture is, okay, now we can list good impurities, and they can be categorized in two different parts. So one part, so where phosphorus and arsenic can be found. In this part, we have our impurity atom has an excessive electron, and that excessive electron actually takes the conduction state. So we have increase of conduction electron. And in the case of boron, there is no conduction electron at all. Or on the other hand, actually a positive particle, usually called as hole, in this bonding state. So when we okay, so for a while, just to stop here, and I wanted to say this type of impurities which can increase the number of conduction electrons is called as N-type impurity. So why we say N-type? What is this? N means that negative. So why negative? So usually electron. Yes. So electron has a negative charge. So N is a short-handed form of negative. Then quite naturally, then we will call this boron as a P-type impurity. So what is the meaning of this P? Of course, you understand this is a positive particle or hole. So that will be the name, or okay, so that is the subcategory of our good or useful impurities. One is N-type impurity, and one is, on the other hand, P-type impurity. Okay, so let me just summarize the lecture up to now. So I just say that boron, phosphorus, arsenic, they are good impurities. And second part, however, boron introduce holes, and phosphorus and arsenic introduce electrons. That is summary of our lecture up to now. Okay, so we are still some time to discuss further topics. So could you please leave your message whether you are with me up to now. So if you have a question, then please say that you don't have any question on these stuffs. And if you have a question, then please say your question, and I can answer your question more. So only sufficient number of students give some feedback, then I can go to our third issue or third topic in today's lecture. Okay, so 이충아 씨, Okay. So Mr. Chungali just ask me some question like this. So conduction electron can contribute to the conductivity. So, however, we just introduce a positive hole. So hole is just confined. So as we all know, hole is actually located here. Hole is just a missing electron. That is the hole. Yes, it is the physical meaning of a hole. Then how can this hole can move? So we can understand, oh, electrons which is in the conduction state, then it can move. We can easily, how can I say, accept that assertion. However, since hole is just located between just impurity atom and yes, then it is very difficult to imagine it can move. So thank you, Mr. Chumali. That is a really good question, and actually that is the topic of our in our lecture. So I will explain it from now on. Thank you. Really thank you for your good question. And okay, so I will answer Mr. Chungali's question for our lecture progress. But before starting that main discussion, I wanted to listen your feedback for other questions. So that his question was really good and quite aligned to my lecture progress. But maybe you have other additional question, then please feel free to ask me a question. Okay. Okay. So there are many other students who are not reacting to my question. So could you please leave your message that you have no further question on this topic? So then I will treat that. Okay, at least up to now our students are well with me. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Good. Then I will just move to the third topic. Then conductivity. How can we say whole has a conductivity? How can a whole contribute to the conduction, current conduction? So think about this one. Now we have silicon or full of silicon, then maybe you can write down in this way. Okay, so this is not perfect way to draw the silicon crystal structure, but anyhow you can understand that for me it is very difficult to exact position of a silicon atom, three-dimensional exact position. So although I have drawn in two-dimensional way, please understand that is just a way of drawing. So this is perfectly clean or perfectly pure silicon, let's say. Then now we introduce a boron atom in somewhere here. Okay, so now a boron atom now occupy this position. Then what will happen? Okay, then our four okay, so we can imagine that this stick here, this stick is actually made of 2 electrons, so provided from each atom. Okay, so we can think about this one. However, this drawing is not good enough because, you know, when we think about this part, actually we don't have a perfect sticks, so bonding here. So I wanted to ask, where is it? So if there is one how can I say, one deficiency of bonding or electron. So from the viewpoint of this boron atom, which one is the preferred position for missing electron? Do you have any preference? So okay, I will just select this guy. But what is the reason? Or okay, I will select this guy for our imperfect bonding. Or so there is no preference for our bonding to be imperfect. So I mean that here we have somewhere here we can at the beginning of our discussion, somewhere here we can have a certain imperfection. So maybe hole can exist here, or hole can exist here, or it can exist here, or it can exist here. So there is no preference. So think about this case. Now here we have a hole here, and physically it means that now there is one electron sent from this one electron, and there is a missing point. That is actually the hole. Then think about now this silicon which has the hole. So of course this hole is not the, how can I say, this hole is not made by this silicon. It's not the fault of this silicon. It just provide 4 electrons already. It finished its duty, but still anyhow it has some points like this. Then now when you think about this guy, I just wanted to magnified version. Then it provides here, and here also there is electrons occupied here, and there is one missing part. However, think about this one. From the viewpoint of this silicon, how about this? Instead of that, any problem for this guy? Okay, it has its own 4 electrons? It is provided from this one. Yes, I have provided 4. And my neighbors provide to me just 3. So I have 7 electrons. And configuration of this or placement of these 7 electrons is really arbitrary. So instead of having a hole for this upper bonding, so it can be located here. Then if that happens, then think about this one. Previously there was a hole here. However, if the missing or imperfection band imperfection bonding occurs in this part, it means that now hole is located here, and now this bonding becomes perfect. Okay. So then think about this now. Think about this one. Yes. Now previously it had 4 full bonding. However, now one of them becomes imperfect. Then once again it can move it to another one, like this one. Then it becomes perfect. Also, yes, it can move and it becomes perfect. So simply speaking, if I answer to Mr. Chungari's question, is that okay, the origin of a hole, why do we have a hole? Initially it is generated by this boron atom. However, we know it. However, there is no need to place our hole, the imperfection band, nearby the boron atom. So it can be placed anywhere. So simply speaking, if we provide certain means, so certain means that usually electric field or difference of hole density, then that imperfect band can move around inside our silicon crystal. Then although it is not a movement of conduction band electron, but it is like previously a positive charge was here, and after some time later we can find a positive charge here. So in global sense, now we say that there was a movement of positive charge from right position to left position. Then we say that although that is not the conduction electron, but anyway that is the movement of a net charge, so it can also introduce change of charge. So that's the reason why this hole even can contribute to the conductivity. So, Mr. Chungari, are you all with me? So, if you have any further question, it is encourages to give me the question. So, and it was really good question. So, quite a natural question we can ask ourselves. And thank you for your good question. And for other students also, if you have any question, then please let me know. Okay. Okay. So please interrupt me anytime you have a question about my lecture contents or related ones. So I will be quite happy to answer your question. So now let's summarize today's lecture. Then Now we have once again silicon wafer, and nearby its top surface we introduce impurities. So by introducing, for example, a shallow layer of boron, shallow layer of boron atoms, then we will have many holes. If we introduce phosphorus or arsenic atoms in this part, then we will have many conduction electrons. These electrons are actually treated as electrons in our case. So simply speaking, now we are quite close to the end of our long discussion. So how can we control or modulate the conductivity of our silicon material? So although there are photonic way or thermal way to changing the electric charge carrier, however, the way of our preference is impurities. So that is really effective. So if you introduce one impurity atom, then usually that introduces one electron or one hole, and that directly contribute to your, how can I say, to your conduction mechanism. So it is directly increase the conductivity of your material. So now we have just 3 minutes left. So we are now talking about this one. Why we care about the silicon and their fabrication up to now. So that is, there was our motivation. We know that if we can generate a circuit element and which can provide non-linearity, then that will be quite good for our application. Here application means that processing certain information from one part to another part. The signal processing can be one part, and another one is also sending the energy. So for example, changing the form of our electricity from AC to DC. So so we wanted to find out way of fabricating a certain nonlinear circuit element. However, that was not that simple. So first of all, we wanted to know how can we register in our semiconductor fabrication. So now you know it. How can we make the register? Yes, so say here we have a silicon substrate, but it is not used at all, and now we introduce, for example, very highly doped region and highly doped region, and we introduce also moderately doped region. And on top of a highly doped region, of course, we will introduce a metal line in order to make our terminal. So that will be used for our terminal, and that will be used for our terminal. So Now let's think about how can we fabricate a resistor. Then one simple way is introduce a n-type dopant here and introduce an n-type dopant here, highly doped n-type dopant here. Highly means that around 10 to the 20 per cubic centimeter. Usually that is regarded as highly. And moderately doped, it really depends on your application. So you can change the number of impurities in that position. And since 10 to the 20 is a so high number, it does not contribute to any resistivity at all in this case, and only the resistivity of this moderately doped region will determine the overall conductivity or the overall resistivity of your system, your circuit element. So now we finish the discussion about how can we fabricate a resistor using the semiconductor technology. Then on next Monday we will move to the way to make a non-linear circuit element which can perform more interesting job. And okay, then I will post the homework number 7 soon, so please solve these problems. So due is as usual next Monday morning. And if you have any further question, then please send me an email as usual. Then I will be very happy to answer your question. Okay, then have a nice weekend and see you. Bye.